Hi Beans! Welcome back to What the Friday, a weekly segment where I tell you the 3 things I found in my research that made me say, what the Friday. 1. We often discuss cases wherein the killer is known to be guilty beyond the shadow of a doubt. Often they will confess. But when it comes down to the trial, the defense will always try to prove that the killer was insane at the time of the crimes, so that when it comes down to the judgment, they are looking for leniency and time in a psychiatric hospital rather than a jail cell. This is especially important in cases involving murderers who are legally children. When you try a child as an adult, you indicate that they have an adult's sense of reasoning, and that just isn't true. Our brain continues to develop well into our 20s, but a teenager is at a point in their life where they are highly impulsive and invincible. They're not invincible. They cannot grasp the true gravity of their actions, not because they don't want to, but rather because they simply don't have the hardware. This is rarely recognized in a court of law, though, but when it is, the results can be pretty astonishing. As is in the case of family annihilator James Gordon Wolcott. On August 4th, 1967, 15-year-old James Gordon Wolcott shot his mother, father, and 17-year-old sister dead in their home with a .22 caliber rifle. Killers love a .22. After he finished this, he walked calmly to the road and flagged down a car, telling them his parents had been shot. James was quick to confess, though, telling detectives that his family annoyed him. His sister had an annoying accent, his father disagreed with his anti-Vietnam War opinions, and his mother chewed loudly. And he gets a pass on that one, because I also want to murder loud chewers. Close your mouth! It's not that hard. James was tried as an adult, but deemed legally insane, with psychiatrists stating that he was schizophrenic and had been sniffing airplane glue at the time of the crimes. And that's a really deceptive name because they mean the glue used to put together a model airplane, which was a common thing that kids inhaled to get high in that point in time. But when I hear the phrase airplane glue, I think it's used for an actual airplane and wonder where a teenager is getting such a weird specialty item. But I digress. James was sentenced to time in a psychiatric hospital and was released just 7 years later. James then went on to change his name to James St. James and attend the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where he earned his doctorate in psychology. After college, James got a job as a professor at Millikan University, where he teaches psychology to this day. Families of students have expressed concerns about James, but the university stands by him, stating that he is an excellent professor and a well-liked, well-adjusted individual, having overcome his traumatic past. So technically, in Illinois, you can study psychology under a man who murdered his entire family in cold blood. 2. Frequently, when we discuss a case wherein a body has been left laying around or was hidden in a home, the first thing that tips people off to its existence is the smell. Because the human body begins to decay immediately after death, the smell can be present within half an hour after they expire. And it's said to smell different to everyone. Those awful aromas are actually chemical gases, though. And while they're super gross, they're also super useful because their presence can alert detectives to the presence. I feel like I just said presence a lot. It's fine. Of a body. In fact, scientists are currently working on a machine that could detect these unique gas combinations in trace amounts. This would enable detectives to track the location of a dead body, and it would sort of be like an incredibly disgusting metal detector that you just never want to hear beep. But that's not all the old nose can be used for. In cases of arson, the perpetrator often uses an accelerant like kerosene or propane, and detectives are trained to not only sniff it out at the scene of the crime, but also on a suspect or in their vehicle. So if you walk around smelling like a gas station, you might just get hauled in for an arson interrogation one day. Yikes. 3. For 16 years, a female serial killer called the Phantom of Heilbronn terrorized Austria, France, and Germany. Investigators had linked the same female to 6 murders through DNA evidence collected at the scene of the crimes. Further DNA analysis linked her to over 40 crimes, in fact. And at the time, the time and effort given to testing every cotton swab in evidence for her DNA was probably pretty monumental. When they finally tracked down this phantom murderer, it turns out that she wasn't a murderer at all. No, the woman whose DNA had been at every crime scene had not visited a single one of them. How is that possible, you ask? Well, it turns out that the DNA found on all of those cotton swabs belonged to a woman who worked in a factory that made them. She touched every single one. The crimes were most likely all unconnected, but detectives probably had a pretty exciting time with the case up until that point, so call it a draw? I don't know. And those are the 3 things I found this week that made me say, what the Friday. See you next week. Bye!